Cost of inflation. An inflation fallacy. Inflation does not in itself reduce people's real purchasing power, because as prices rise, incomes rise. That worksheet we just did shows an example of how the real wages may not be as much as the prior years or year wages you're comparing to. So people do lose purchasing power because of inflation. Wages and inflation are not exactly aligned. And prices may go up more than wages. Wages may go up more than inflation. Right now, in the current economy, one of the some parts of the economy are doing really well, but one of the gripes of people is that wages aren't going up. Okay, unemployment's good, but wages are not going up. So, and the current administration is trying to do things to remedy that. So it'll be interesting what happens. So, cost of inflation. One of the costs of inflation is shoe leather costs. And the explanation gives you the reason why they call it shoe leather costs. Okay? Shoe leather costs are resources wasted when inflation encourages people to reduce their money holdings. So if you consider inflation kind of like a tax, right? To avoid the inflation tax, right, people go to the bank more often. For an example, rather than withdrawing $200 every 4 weeks, you withdraw $50 once a week. That way, if there's inflation going on, if you take the $50 out, you won't lose as much of its value if you're taking $50 out each week rather than waiting 4 weeks to take another $200 out. Right? And so these frequent trips to the bank keep more dollars in an interest-bearing savings account and less in your wallet, where inflation erodes the values. I might have kind of explained that backward. Okay, so if they rather than take $200 out, right, then all at once you're going to keep it in the bank longer, so that you have more money in the bank accruing interest. Okay, and so the interest would counter off the inflation more. So you're going to make a lot more trips to the bank if there's inflation, and so you'll wear out your shoe leather. That's why they call it shoe leather costs. You wear out your shoe leather going to the bank.
So is that like your car then?
Well, it's what do you mean? It's like your car?
I just know, so what is the shoe leather like yourself then?
The shoe leather is. It means that you go to shoe leather cost means you go to the bank a lot to take money out, right? So you don't lose as much from inflation. And those are costs related to inflation. Yes, that would be a cost on your car, because you have to pay gas. And the mileage you put on your car depreciates it. So yeah, it could be the car, it could be your time, it could be a number of any kind of opportunity costs related to going to the bank. Right? Okay. All right. Second, menu costs. The cost of changing prices. The typical U.S. firm changes its price once a year. Right? So, and they have to they change their prices. One of the reasons is inflation. They adjust for inflation. So the cost of changing prices, like if restaurants change their menus, they change it more than once a year, but it includes the cost of deciding new prices, the cost of printing new price lists and catalogs, cost of sending these new price lists and catalogs to dealers and customers, and the cost of advertising new prices. So if you have to change your prices to adjust for inflation, there's cost to that, right? If there's no inflation, ideally, costs would always stay the same, right? But because of inflation, they have to change the price. Those are menu costs. There are others, but the two we discussed are the most significant. Menu costs and shoe leather costs. Yeah.
So the menu cost isn't the cost to the consumer for having to pay more, it's the cost to the business for having to change it.
Yes. That's correct. So reducing inflation, there is a cost. It reduces output, right? So, and we'll learn more about that, but if to try to slow down inflation, okay, then it's the things they do to do that slow down output. They reduce GDP. All right. So, and one of the things they can do is adjust interest rates, right? And if they raise interest rates to slow down inflation, that's going to decrease investment, which decreases GDP. So that's one of the examples of why it reduces output. So sacrifice ratio. The definition of the sacrifice ratio is the number of percentage points of annual output lost in the process of reducing inflation by 1 percentage point. Okay, so if the government does take steps to reduce inflation, how much output is lost? That's that ratio is the sacrifice ratio. Rational expectation is the theory according to which people optimally use all the information they have, including information about government policies, when forecasting the future. For example, the Federal Reserve increases the money supply. That's going to increase aggregate demand, and workers will think, okay, this is going to cause inflation, so they'll ask for higher wages. All right, that's people pay attention to that. All right, so if workers anticipate inflation, they'll ask for higher wages. Okay, teachers, every year or every other year or so, we negotiate into our contract a cost of living increase. Right, and it's because of inflation. We're asking for a raise because we want our salaries adjusted for inflation. All right, any questions? No questions.